Hey, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're looking at Twinmotion and its roadmap. So recently, Twinmotion released its roadmap, and what a roadmap is really is like, where is this program going? What is it doing? What is it hoping to achieve in the near future? But I will leave this link in the description below. So I just wanted to go through this because it's really exciting. I know some other people might have done some videos on this, but I've wanted to do this specifically myself because I love Twinmotion. There are lots of great things that I see going on with this program, and I'm really excited, even more excited to see all these new updates that are potentially coming out with Twinmotion with this roadmap. And you know, the fact that we have a roadmap is pretty exciting because lots of programs like Revit that I use all the time, you can find some potential future updates, but nothing like this in such a visual way, descriptive way that lays out everything that they've done, that they're hoping to do, and that they're considering. Very helpful, really awesome that they're doing this, but I wanted to share this with everyone. Also, just run through a few of these and highlight a few that I think that will be really impactful to the program and the future of Twinmotion. So first, there's three tabs up here, and there's an under construction, and in progress, and released. So you could start to look at what these are, released being what we have already, in progress, what we're going to have, and under consideration, what we might get to have. And fortunately, Unreal and Epic Games has set this up in a way to where we actually have a say in this. So clicking on any of these will allow me to decide if it would be just nice to have, important, or absolutely critical to what I do. And that's great because you can go through all these and vote essentially on what you want to see out of Twinmotion. And on top of that, you actually have the option of submitting a new idea. And that's great. And I haven't necessarily gone through this, but you're welcome to. And if it happens to be that your idea is something that they love and they want to do, it will probably show up in the under consideration tab, and then people can start voting on that. So I would highly consider, if you have a great idea, to submit an idea and move forward with that. So let's jump right into it here. This is the release tab. We're looking at everything that's released within Twinmotion. Most of this is what is new in Twinmotion 2020. And you can see that here, this is, yes, as of Twinmotion 2020.1 in March 2020. And of course, we've got this latest hotfix, and this is really important. And honestly, this is something I missed, but I think I hit the update button in the Epic Games launcher just because I saw an update. And let's look at what this update actually is. So this latest hotfix within Twinmotion 2020.1 is actually 0.1.1. And so it's just a hotfix. It's fixing a number of issues that were seen quite often in Twinmotion. So some of the key here updates are Twinmotion crashes when exporting media. Well, that's now been fixed. Crashes, it has a lot to do with crashes, and the problem I had the most with Twinmotion, and even when I'm recording a lot of these videos, is using the Revit direct link. Twinmotion would just crash when I'm resyncing the project, and I would get that so often. I can't tell you how often I would see that. And of course, I'd cut that out of my video, but the fact that it would happen over and over again when I'm trying to record a video was just not only annoying, but it was ridiculous. The fact that you couldn't use the program essentially at sometimes. It seemed like I had to cross my fingers. Twinmotion crashes when reopening some project. That was a big one too. Of course, just want to reopen a project. And of course, all the other things that would happen here. But the biggest issues I had were reopening and resyncing projects using the Revit direct link. So since this update that I seemingly just ran on my own one day when I saw an update button pop up, it's been great. I haven't noticed a crash. It's been really, really good. And let me tell you where you can show and find this update. If we look at the Epic Games launcher, you'll have to sign in and everything, of course, but you'll see the Unreal Engine up here, but we're looking specifically for Twinmotion, of course. And if you do see Twinmotion that says launch, that's great. You're up to date. If not, you'll see a giant update button here. Just click that, go through the motions. It's pretty simple. You don't have to do anything specific. Now, I will say things look a little buggy because I see Twinmotion 2020.1, and I know I should be on 2020.1.1 as of the hotfix. Now, these other versions and previous versions of Twinmotion seem to be missing for some reason, but you can click them. So what this version is that's highlighted and you can't read or see is just the regular Twinmotion 2020, and the one before that is 2020, or is actually Twinmotion 2019. So I don't want to deal with those. I wouldn't recommend dealing with those or downloading them at all. So I would make sure you're within Twinmotion 2020.1. And if this does say update, make sure you update that. And after you see go from update to launch, you have the hotfix. If you see 2020.1 and launch, you have the hotfix and you're good to go. And that's what I have. So getting back here to the roadmap, these are all the things that we've seen in 2020.1. Nothing special here beyond everything that was already exciting us within Twinmotion 2020. Screen space, global illumination. You can see that with the actual sun showing up, you've got this orange hue due to this orange glow due to the pillow and the fabric there. New sky models, area lights, point lights is awesome. Automatic exposure. We've seen this in other programs like Inkscape. Cinematic depth of field. This looks awesome, but you can get any kind of depth of field now. Volumetric light. I'll make a specific video on this because this is really powerful and you can create really nice looking scenes with this. Realistic humans, you get a direct link for Rhino 5 and 6, that's great. Easier video creation and media export. Vegetation growth. Now this is one of the bigger updates within Twinmotion 2020, the fact that you can grow and see your vegetation grow. You got the new paint tool with vegetation, scattering, you can scatter the vegetation everywhere. Video as a material, so you can play a video on a screen, that's cool as a material. Custom cutouts and decals, pretty simple stuff, but another form of material. X-ray material, I definitely want to make a specific video on this and will be in the future, so look out for that because this has lots of potential to be used with different types of architectural models. For example, I'm an architect, so I work with architecture models, but we have tons of consultant models, and that's where the power of these X-ray materials can come into play. And of course, everyone's favorite, enhance emissive material. We love emissive materials or self-illuminated materials. They look beautiful. We have all of that now built into Twinmotion 2020. SketchUp 2020 support, that's great. We can get that linked up. So now let's move into the in progress. I would say this is probably my most anticipated section because we know this is going to happen. Everything in this tab will happen because it's currently being worked on. We've got all these different new direct links. We've got the Twinmotion to Unreal Engine. I will say this is it's more important and more powerful than it appears because you might think, okay, well normally you're working within the Epic games and so you've got Unreal and Twinmotion, but we haven't had the option of going from Twinmotion to Unreal ever. You've had to jump over lots of hoops, exporting whatnot. It's just it wouldn't work that well. But now with this, you can really get some nice Unreal Engine scenes up and running from your Twinmotion scenes because I don't use Unreal all that much because it's just a pain to start from scratch and there's all kinds of things. But if you can start from a high quality Twinmotion model, you're well off. Of course, direct link with Revit, direct link with ArchiCAD, Datasmith, imports. We've got an improved car material. This looks pretty cool. Of course, we all love better looking materials, especially for cars. We love cars looking good. Improved water materials. Nothing bad to say about this. Love water, love good looking water. Improving glass materials. Glass can always be improved, and so the fact that they're going through this is awesome. Reworking rain. This looks great. Of course, you can see the before and the work in progress. It looks beautiful. My hope is that we'll have actually more control over how we show this and where we show rain, because a lot of what you have now is basically, I want to see rain, I want it to be wet everywhere, and maybe you don't necessarily want that. I kind of wonder if the idea of rain or some sort of weather would be baked in or using the vegetation paint, so like you could almost paint this where you'd want. Maybe it shows up as some sort of a material, some sort of overlay or something. That would be nice to see. So I'm hoping that they're adding more functionality to the rain and not just having it look better. Now, of course, looking better is always nice as well. Asian trees, always like an increased variety of trees. Aircrafts, of course, smaller, larger. We want to see more aircrafts. That's great. Construction equipment, of course, that would be nice. Now, the thing I'm most excited about of all these in progress is the parametric doors, rotator translator. The fact that, if you're familiar with Inkscape at all, you can have a door in Revit or whatever program. The Inkscape is good enough to detect that that's a door coming out of Revit. And that's just because of how doors are made in Revit, the fact that they're system models and all that. But The fact that Inkscape detects it as a door means that Inkscape turns collision off of that door, meaning that you as the user can walk through that door, and that's perfect. That's awesome. Now, as you can see here, the fact that this door is open and we've got parametric doors, it leads me to believe that, especially if this being under the animation and phasing tab, that not only will we be able to walk through doors, but by walk through doors, I mean the doors will open for you. And this will work again with, it's now an intelligent door system, and this will work with characters and the camera. So like you as the user in the camera, it will also work with the characters and open for the characters. Now, this is fantastic. Now, if this is executed the way I'd hope it to be, then all these doors will open beautifully. We can walk through them. They'll shut behind us, everything. That is exactly what you want when it comes to some sort of 3D scene and animations, making videos. That would be great. And of course, something similar is the rotator and translator. Maybe you have doors that aren't traditional doors or gates, and having the idea of this opening and closing gives your scene more life. You know, we've got sounds and all that, and you know, particles, and that looks real. But like, if every model in the scene is static and like stuck in place, then things seem kind of stuck. Like it's not quite realistic enough. And the fact that you get gates open and doors open now is really the next level, and I'm happy to see that with Twinmotion. This is kind of interesting. I don't see quite the place of where this will end up, but it's a dock phasing, basically the phasing of your project. You can go ahead and give this different sections to your project, different phases, and it's set up in a form of a Gantt chart. If you're familiar with that, it's just a way of organizing different tasks across a period of time, and that's traditionally seen within the construction industry and the architecture industry. So we're familiar with this, we've seen it before. I just can't understand why this is going to show up in Twinmotion, because I view Twinmotion more as a presentation tool, as a way of tracking my design and seeing the progress there. Now maybe this is a good way of tracking your design and going throughout where you were and then where you are in the design and going back and forth. Maybe that's the way this will work. It looks almost like you're planning in the future as to phases of your project and when they'll be done. If that's the case, I don't know if a presentation program is quite necessary to have something like this, but we'll see where it goes. So nonetheless, I'm excited. And finally, under the consideration tab, this is everything that's under consideration that they're thinking about. And so, in my opinion, everything in this tab will be more impacted by your vote, because clearly they're considering these things, but they're not fully sure. So if you find this as critical, then absolutely make it critical and tab critical there. So the direct link from InfraWorks, that's great. We could pull in all of these really nice civil files and everything that goes with InfraWorks. Really cool stuff in InfraWorks. LiDAR point clouds. The fact that you can pull point clouds into Unreal is great, but we haven't been able to do that in Twinmotion. So my hope is, yeah, if this goes through, we can pull in our point clouds just directly into Twinmotion. I'm probably most excited about this because you might have a specific object that is an FBX, and you can go to the trouble of animating it in 3ds Max if you want to. And most of the time I don't necessarily need to do that, but if it is some sort of cloth or cover like this would be really nice to be able to see and be able to do and control within Twinmotion, and would really step up that, you know, static, flat, basic look of Twinmotion, kind of where we are now, to hopefully having a more lively looking scene, something that's real, something that's reacting to the wind, things like that. And this is really great. So I'm definitely going to hit critical there. Definitely going to do that. Vray Materials support. If you're a fan of Vray Materials, then of course you're always a fan of anything Vray has to offer when it comes to implementing these materials into some other program like Twinmotion. I do love Vray Materials. I have used them in the past. I wouldn't personally, because I don't use a lot of Vray Materials. I don't find it quite necessary with all the different programs out now. Of course, I see the value in Vray Materials, but I don't find it quite necessary, because honestly, I'm happy enough with the Twinmotion materials, and I'm also happy enough making my own materials. So I would probably just put this as nice to have or important. I don't find this critical, but you might as a Vray material user. parallax occlusion map support. I'm always a fan of more maps available to us when it comes to materials, because allowing this, having a parallax occlusion map, is just going to bring, again, this is a more subtle way of bringing life to the material, not only to the material but to the scene, making it seem more real, in the idea that as you move, this material is going to slightly warp in a way that actually is 3D looking. So that's really exciting, because this is just a flat looking map, but yet you get the 3D effect from these rocks due to this parallax support. So I'm really hoping to see something like this. This is critical to me, because most other programs that I use do not have parallax occlusion map support. Nothing like this. And then render passes. If you're a fan of touching up in Photoshop and things like that, you might be familiar with Inkscape's version of this, because you can export an image and it will give you all these different alpha channels. You've got the different material maps, so based on where you have a particular material, that material will show up as this separate image that you can use to select, because all of these different materials show up as the same color if they're the same material. So you can select this color for that material in the entire scene and then affect that particular color on the final rendering in Photoshop. So really, really nice to be able to see all that. And this will help you, in this case, get a really nice custom looking sky that you can import and bring into Photoshop and make it look pretty nice, because it's going to cut out everything of your building and just leave you with the sky that you can put that sky into. That's really cool to see. Characters reacting, like this is next level characters, because the characters in Twinmotion look beautiful as it is and good enough, but the fact that they'd react to rain or snow and just act differently, that's just the next level. I don't have much else to say, but that's really cool. High resolution rendering beyond what GPU can do. So this is kind of interesting. It kind of makes me wonder what they're doing here, but if I read this, a new feature to render very high resolution stills and videos was introduced within the Unreal Engine 4.25. Bringing this capability into Twinmotion would allow to render content at higher quality and higher resolution, 16K and above, without being limited by GPU memory. So this is basically just bypassing what the GPU can do and saying, all right, we can go beyond this, even though it's not technically possible. It's just built into the program now. So that's fantastic. I would say this is critical, because having images, like imagine having a 16K image, like that's the size of a wall, basically, something stupid big, but having it be crystal clear still, that's awesome. Ray tracing support. We all love to see ray tracing, and of course now with all these new NVIDIA RTX cards, that's kind of baked in, and the idea of ray tracing is really one of the big features with those cards, the fact that you can do proper ray tracing with the cards and not blink an eye. It's fine, it's working, but bringing that feature into Twinmotion would just step everything up one more level. Camera matching, this is kind of cool, pretty interesting. This new tool would allow to import a photo to extract the camera and light sources to insert your project onto real life photo for showing it in context of the environment. Really interesting. I would like to see more information when it comes to this camera matching, but still sounds pretty cool. And we always love to see reflection probe improvements. They can always use some improvements, but they're one of the things that really bog down some of these scenes, because if you go crazy with them, they will just ruin your scene. But always, seeing extra improvements to this is something we like to see. High quality assets, like look at all these assets. Like I'm not even gonna go through all these. There's just so many of them. Integration with all these mega scans or interior furniture, like just for days. HDI map sky, like this is fantastic. I would love to see this in particular, because if we can add an HDRI sky map into Twinmotion, along with what we can already do in Twinmotion, that would be just amazing, and your scenes would look even better. License plates, interesting. Smart escalator, like sound enhancement, like this is awesome. Really great stuff. More buildings, biomes. This is kind of interesting, because the idea of biomes is that maybe you have a scene in a particular location, or you want your scene to look like it's in a particular location. You can start to determine the type of biome or the type of vegetation you see with this update, having the basically creating your own biome, getting a specific biome, because maybe it is in Iceland, for example. I don't know. I haven't done many projects in Iceland, and by that I mean I haven't done any. But if your scene is something like Iceland, like the scene itself or the biome, being able to choose that and then having to select from those types of vegetation and populating your scene that way that's awesome. It makes things much easier. Of course, vegetation enhancements, we always love to see that. We already have a lot. Color variance, that's great. We might have some ability of changing what some of these outfits look like. That's cool. Project authoring, spacing tool. These are probably some of the things I'm most excited about. So spacing, adding a spacing tool to spawn objects at regular intervals. Now, imagine that. Like, maybe we want to have parking spaces every 9 feet apart. Maybe we want to have these lights every 25 feet apart along a roadway. That's fantastic. Bollards every so far apart. Road tool. Now, the roads are great. Everything we have like that is great, but it's a little weird in that you have to make it specific, and like you have to go point by point, and it's not like well defined like a road really kind of is. Like you have very specific dimensions, and now with a more specific road tool, not only can you more quickly do this, but you can have really anything that you want within the road and have it be built to just simply follow this path like we're used to. Custom keyboard shortcuts, a marker tool. This is kind of interesting because, you know, maybe you want to mark up things in 3D. Maybe you want to give your scene to a designer and have them mark things up and not actually go ahead and make these changes. Or maybe you want to just like add these marks on the road like as more of a presentation piece. Very interesting. I'd like to see this. Railroad tool. I'm sure this will work very similarly, if not the same, to the road tool, but really cool stuff. Really cool stuff. I always like to see this. Fence and hedge, you know, not a lot of times do I need to make a fence or a hedge, but having this capability, just using another basic path, is awesome. I love to see this kind of stuff. Camera positioning grid. Now, this seems like one of the most basic things you'd ever want to have within a program, but nonetheless, I think this is absolutely important to frame all of your renderings. 3D connections, space navigator, we love seeing this. All the keyboard shortcuts, great. Pivot objects, it's cool. Add a new tool to edit the pivot point of an object imported inside Twinmotion. So maybe you don't want it necessarily default to the center. Maybe you want it somewhere else. So like in this case, you've got this light post selected, but the pivot is way out here in the street. Maybe you want that, but that's kind of cool. Copy-paste settings between images. Very nice to see. We have lots of images that we want to have look similar, or, you know, obviously it's the same place, and maybe you have it at the same time of day or anything like that. Having those copy-paste settings between images is just fantastic, and that is an absolute must. And a title. Cool, nonetheless. Having a little title, really nice. Animation. This goes on, and like we're finally at the end here, but this is everything that's under consideration. It's really great. Same characters and vehicles position at export, so that's cool. Again, maybe you want to see changes within your model, but you don't want the characters to change, so that's cool. You could have them in the same location. That's great. This is kind of interesting. Like, we're getting into like actual filmmaking, having a handheld camera movement. Now, this is definitely not necessary for me because, again, I use it more for a presentation tool, and a presentation tool that's not quite along the lines of something that's with the handheld, but even still, pretty cool. Time-lapse. I am just an absolute fan of time-lapses, and having the traffic work with the time-lapses is really great, and like the people and everything, all of that, that's great. You have to have this. Adding multiple objects to a custom path. Now, I've recently done a custom path tool, and the reason I'm not a big fan of it is that, you know, you only can put one object on each path, and that's okay because you end up duplicating the path and just changing the object, so in a way you get the same effect as this. But the fact that you can have one custom path and add multiple objects to it is just, I'm sold on it completely. Of course, we always love VR enhancements. This is just general improvements, of course. We always want that. Multi-user project review. Like, come on. You've got multiple people in your project viewing it at the same time. This, like using the presenter, this is fantastic. This is going to set Twinmotion apart. This, of course, everything else is nice visually. When it comes to building your scene, is nice, but I can't think of another program that works easily and looks beautiful out of the box almost, that allows multiple users to be in a scene. Now, that's hard enough to build as it is when it comes to VR and using other engines, but If this is just like built in to Twinmotion, that's game changing. And then finally, changing materials in Presenter. That's cool. Like we all have design options. We have different things we want to look at. So why not have this ability in Presenter? That's really great. And then phasing, even better. This is going back all the way. This is a big architecture hitter right here. I'm really excited about this because you probably have phases of your project. You might have phases that show different models, everything like that. And the fact that we can have phasing show up in the Presenter is really taking everything to the next level. Like, can you imagine all this together? You've got phasing and multiple users, all these X-ray materials, all in a Presenter. That's in the Presenter mode. That's awesome. So finally, that is it. We've looked at the whole roadmap. I've given you a basic rundown of everything that we've seen that's under construction, in progress, as well as what we have already released for us. If you have any new ideas, definitely submit those ideas. I'm really curious to see what kind of ideas you've got. So if you have any ideas for Twinmotion, leave those in the comment section below. I'd love to see what we've got as far as ideas too. So if you did enjoy this video and happen to learn something, if you wouldn't, please demolish that like button. That really helps me out. And if you stuck around this long, I don't have anything else to say other than you're awesome and thank you so much. Also, consider changing the phase of that subscribe button to existing. That also really helps me out a lot, and always appreciate that. I sure hope you have a wonderful day. See you in the next video.